Hey, long time no see. It's the PGN Par 4. Apparently, we only do these after the Ryder Cup or major championships on the men's side. I'm Matt Geica with Zac Weiss. As we get going, it does feel like golf season again. I always, I suppose, get a little more tuned into what's going on in the golf scene once the weather turns, and it seems like it finally has across most of the northern U.S. I'm here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Zac is back in Pittsburgh, PA. And Zac, we do have a local story to talk about in the Masters, but it feels like we need to start with another transcendent, another dominant performance from Scottie Scheffler, who, as I wrote on the website earlier this week, I feel like it's a great thing for golf to at least have one alpha on the men's side I'm talking about, because as of right now, the best players are only getting together every or four times a year, maybe five in a Ryder Cup year. So it's really tremendous to see that we can just agree on one thing, and that is that Scottie Scheffler is number one. That's what I was left with my takeaway. That's my prime takeaway from what we saw over this past weekend in Augusta.
Well, sure. I mean, Scottie Scheffler never really faced any pressure, and he really hasn't faced any pressure at all this season. When you look at the full body of work, his worst finish is a tie for 17 at the American Express. I mean,
Yeah.
if that doesn't tell you that the guy's unfazed, every single round, fourth round, let's not count the fourth round for Pebble Beach because there wasn't one, but every single final round this season in 2024, here he is with a round in the 60s. I mean, here's a guy that's had neck injuries that did flare up again at Augusta, and that might have been the most stressed baby aside that he's had to face the entire week. I mean, at any point he could have gotten the call. I guess they would have had to find some way to carrier pigeon the news into Augusta National if something had transpired there, given the long list of no's at that place lists that put stage AE to shame. But regardless of that, I mean, what Scotty's been able to do is just been steady Eddie and not make the mistakes while a lot of the other guys have given back to the field. And when your last four starts are 1-1 T2-1, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that going in. And so many times you talk about the guy that's in the best form, and there was no doubt. And of course, a cooperative flat stick really, really goes a long way. I think the narrative on that last year might have been a little tired, a little bit per se, but regardless of that, he's more than figured that out. And hey, Teddy Long is Teddy Long. I got my wrestling in there. I mean, of course, with this is a mid-season form for all of us. But when you have a caddy that's now won four Masters tournaments, there's a lot to be said for experience being such a great teacher. And are we at Scotty versus the field at this point? No, no, we're not. Not to mention, as you said yourself, a lot of guys that might have had something to say about that conversation just aren't getting the PGA Tour reps that they were in the past. And it's interesting because you look like at a guy named like Rory McIlroy, and you're expecting some things. He kind of tweaked his alteration just to perform well this week and just ended up on the wrong side of the draw. And again, it giveth, it taketh away. But what Scotty was able to do was even when he shot 72, 71 in those middle two rounds, he just kept playing his game, and it was just a different course for him. It wasn't total domination necessarily until the end when a lot of guys were giving way, but Scotty, even when he was a shot back or he was co-leading, he never really felt out of the mix. He never really felt out of place. And it shows the game that he has, the confidence that he has. And I think another thing that really helps out Scotty is so many guys now are focused on status, and so many guys are focused on doing the best in their respective tournaments and their signature events. And really, if you look down the priority list, it doesn't seem like golf is as big of a hobby for, or as big of a priority rather, for Scottie Scheffler as maybe it is for other people. And that ability to maybe play a little bit more freely and to have a little bit less stress out on the golf course really goes a long way. And I think that even more so than this overblown putter debacle from last year is really what helped him. Yeah, of course, there's the stress that you could miss officially being in the room when you become a father for the first time and everything that comes with that. But that being said, I mean, what he was able to do was just so incredibly special. No shot felt out of place. Everything felt like it had a purpose attached to it. And sometimes that really goes. And of course, having won at the Masters before, the only thing that looked out of place was John Rahm at Butler Cabin. But regardless of that, I mean, it just felt like everything was just natural. And he didn't necessarily coast. I mean, let's not forget that most of that front nine was not exactly up to par, no pun intended, but really it was that eighth hole into the ninth that kind of turned things around. And from there, just getting those sea legs. And I think some of it might have had to do with not necessarily the nerves about the course, but of course about being a dad. And I think, again, the neck kind of reared its head. Scottie admitted earlier today that the neck really had a lot to do too. And he had to kind of stop his warm up, which was already abbreviated, to get some more treatment and go back out and finish the job. So, really it was the game within the game. And I think that uncertainty and that shake to the equilibrium might have been a bigger test than any single golfer on that leaderboard, with no offense to Ludwig Aberg or anybody else. Max Homa, I mean, heck, Tommy Fleetwood, nice to see him on a first page in a leaderboard with a caddy that's not his natural caddy. What a story that was. But I mean, aside from that, I mean, it was Scottie versus the course on Sunday, and it looked like the course was going to win, and then Scottie just needed that one shot. When athletes get that one familiar feeling in any sport, it just brings a certain level of comfort and competitiveness that maybe wasn't there before. And what Scottie found on number 8 really allowed the rest of the afternoon to transpire the way he wanted it to back at Butler Cabin. So there's a lot to be said for the trials and tribulations that the week was, but now Scottie's probably on fumes, and I think Scottie's waiting for that phone call. I think now that he's not at Augusta National, I think that phone's in his pocket and he's ready for it to go on vibrate at any point in time. And I think at that point, that's officially when, as you know, Matt, fatherhood begins and the sleep ends. So really, I mean, that's kind of where everything is. But, good for Scottie. This is a great week, and it was nice to see it all come together on the biggest stage.
Yeah, I'm glad for him that he got his second major and a second green jacket, but more importantly, a second major before the kid happened, because it's going to change some things. He's not going to feel that good physically for a little while. Like you said, I can speak from experience, so can a lot of folks. But anyone who's ever been sleep deprived, you know what that's like. And if you're trying to be a top level pro athlete, not a lot of us know what that's like. So we can imagine that would be very difficult. To your point on turning points, definitely Sunday, right? The four-way tie for the lead as Scheffler was near the end of the front nine. For me, I go back to Saturday, though, because Thursday, he stayed within striking distance of DeChambeau and Homa. It was more about them sprinting out to that quick start on a somewhat softened golf course after a little bit of rain. But then Friday, nobody's scoring, so Scheffler just hangs around par there. And Saturday, he gets to the middle of that round, and the putting has gotten a lot better. And I think we saw exactly how he's been able to lean on the putter a little bit more. Whereas in the past, the putter was holding him back. He was a below average putter. He was giving away strokes to the field in so many events when he was dominating tee to green based on the strokes gain number alone, or just watching him just look shaky on a lot of those mid to short range putts. He misses a very short putt for bogey on 10 on Saturday. He drops 2 shots back, but then a couple of holes later on number 12, gets up and down, makes about a 10-footer for par. Serious gut check moment there. And then on 13, rolls in the eagle. So the putter, in a way, bailed him out in that spot. And that's got to give him so much confidence, because he's the best ball striker in the world right now. And he has been for the last, say, year and a half. Maybe, well, I guess Jon Rahm had that heater at the start of 2023, which included the Masters, of course. But Scheffler consistently has been right there since the end of 2022 when you talk about off the tee and especially approaching the green. No one's been this good in those categories since peak Tiger. So Scheffler is there. He's got the putting at least average. He's just got to be average putting. And thanks to Phil Kenyon and an open mind from Scheffler and his team, he's made some changes there. And sky's the limit right now. And you hope he can just ride this heater for his sake, because, like I said, I think golf needs someone to step up and say, I'm the guy, come chase me. And as far as I'm concerned, it should be Scottie Scheffler for the near future. Like I said, barring any kind of sleep-deprived moments on the golf course. He's, like I said, he's probably not going to be at his peak for a little while, but that could also be overblown. Maybe he runs on adrenaline throughout the course of the summer and perhaps hits a crash at the end of the year. It's all speculation at this point. Let's go on to our second shot, though, on today's par 4. And thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe here on the YouTube channel, and make sure to bookmark Pittsburgh Golf Now, as we'll have more content for you as golf season heats up. Let's talk about Pittsburgh's own Neal Shipley, and also Pittsburgh's own his caddy, Carter Pitcairn. Both of them making it to the weekend at Augusta. He's the only amateur to make the cut. Shipley of Central Catholic, and also more recently James Madison University, and now as a grad student at Ohio State University. But Shipley making the cut, so automatically he was going to be the low amateur, get his little moment in the sun there in Butler Cabin, but also he gets to play by sheer luck with Tiger Woods on Sunday. So for amateurs in this event, Zach, it is about making the weekend first and foremost. You always know you have that carrot dangling. There is that special honor at the end, and it can really give you a boost as far as your Q rating is concerned in the world of golf. But Neal Shipley seems like a real down-to-earth type of guy. Haven't had a chance to interview him yet, but we do look forward to seeing more of him on the scene in Pittsburgh. He, of course, rose to prominence over the last couple of years. Didn't do too well at the 2021 U.S. Amateur at Oakmont that we covered on site, but since then it's been an upward trajectory for him. So what were your impressions of the young man who, admittedly, he said after the round on Sunday, he thinks people relate to him because he looks just like a regular guy out there, and I have to admit there is a very powerful everyman quality to him when you watch him play golf.
Oh, sorry, that wasn't the telestrator. Okay. Anyways,
I forgot to
no,
mention that. Yeah, he was
Neil's.
a little bit
Yeah, that was too
distracted,
easy.
a little distracted in
We'll
Butler
do it
Cabin.
taped. But no, no, hey, it happens, and he owned up to it. I mean, you don't want to say anything improper inside Butler Cabin with the dignitaries that are in that room. And first of all, before we go into Neil, very, very, very quick tip of the cap to Vern Lundquist and what Vern's been able to do to be a voice of the Masters for 40 years in his 80s now. I mean, the moment that he had with Tiger Woods on 16, a man that does not break for anything when he's in competitive mode. It just there's something to be said about the respect that Vern has earned, and having the blessing to meet Vern has been amazing. But the focus again is on Neil, and a lot of people had the opportunity to meet Neil through the USAM, and what an amazing journey that was for him to end his semifinal match the way he did on Saturday of last year was incredibly special. For him to secure a spot in the US Open was, for this year still coming up, is incredibly special. There's fairy tales like what happened, of course, with Michael Block last year that everybody had the opportunity to see, but this just takes it just a little bit step forward because it's somebody that feels like they can have legitimate tour aspirations after the week that was shown, and other than a few loose shots, really, really acquitted himself well. And throughout the whole tournament, I made a concerted effort to have some text conversations with his coach at Corey O'Connor back from high school. And Corey is a very, very good friend of mine. And the whole week we were just talking it through, and we saw the start and we said it's looking good for the weekend. And then you go, wow, it looks like he's going to be the only amateur that makes the weekend. You know what that means, Corey? I do, but let's wait and see. And then that happened. And then even though Saturday's pitfall happened, immediately when I texted, I saw the leaderboard right away and I said, Corey, it's going to be Tiger. He had just finished the round and I mean, Tiger was still out there. And I said to Corey, the way it's going, it looks like it's going to be Tiger. I feel like I was kind of Nostradamus before anybody else was. He said, we'll see. And then I said to Corey, so it's just as if the story needed one more chapter. And of course, yourself and myself were familiar with Carter. Carter caddied for Austin Greaser throughout that US Am that was at Oakmont Country Club. So we both had the opportunity to talk to Carter, who now collegiately plays, I believe, at Minnesota, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. So Carter is continuing his college aspiration, and this is a relationship that's kind of been forged throughout their time in high school. And Carter, of course, has had the opportunity to play Oakmont, knows the course, so legitimately has been a member there, so legitimately knows the course and knows how to play at high stakes and knows how to handle those moments. And as much of a joy as it was for Neil, I can only imagine the joy that Carter felt walking the fairways right next to Tiger Woods. And Lance Bennett, a caddy in his own right, who's been on the bag of some major, major names, including Matt Kuchar, among several others. But I mean, that's just such a special moment to talk to Tiger in the final round, his 100th career round playing at the Masters, and just having that opportunity, knowing that you're going to be in Butler Cabin, knowing that you're going to have that opportunity as the low am, and it was so special. And to see the reaction from his team when he was back on campus at Ohio State was just so incredibly special. And the plan's going to be that I'll be having it in person, hopefully with Neal next month. That's going to officially be the plan. Let a lot of the major questions that everybody wants to know now, but then let maybe get a little bit more in depth and have a little bit more fun. Probably going to try to marinate that with while I'm in town for Memorial Tournament Media Day. So a really, really good opportunity to kind of double dip and just get an opportunity to go about it that way. That would be really, really cool to get the chance to talk to Neal. I know there's no tournament for Ohio State that week, so there's a possibility that that might be open because I know he's done some of the local radio stops, but just different, cool to experience it, incredibly relatable. And the patrons at Augusta National really, really got behind him as he continued on this journey. It was very, very special. And of course, he made headlines off the golf course too, on the golf course, just with how everything was handled at Butler Cabin, just represented the city incredibly well the entire way through. Yeah, he had some stray shots, but I think the overall message for him is what I mentioned earlier, that he feels that he can acquit himself in the professional ranks. And I think a guy that's got multiple degrees, a guy that's graduated in 3 years, really feels that maybe playing the tour is a possibility now, that maybe he thought that he had the game, but he can see himself having the game. And beating Tiger Woods on a Sunday isn't exactly the easiest thing to do. There's so many men that can say they've not had the opportunity to do that. And here's an amateur from Pittsburgh that's able to do just that. And not to be outdone, I mean, with Tiger's been able to battle at 48 with fuses and multiple bodies and all the surgeries, everything's so well documented. For him to make the cut was amazing, but the moment still felt like it was Neal Shipley's, and that's so incredibly hard to do, given what Tiger is, what Tiger commended, and the hoopla that's always surrounded by playing Tiger. But it felt like after the first hole and the square got on the scorecard, excuse me, for Neal, it felt like it freed him up a little bit to play. And I think Tiger really put him at ease and allowed him to have fun out there. So good on Neal. Really, really, again, represented well and incredibly impressed with what I saw.
Yeah, it looked like quite a bit of camaraderie there between he and Tiger Woods, who, of course, I know every time he plays with an amateur at a big event like that, probably flashes back to the many majors and events that he played as an amateur before he turned professional in 1996, and of course took the PGA Tour and the sports world by storm at that moment. And as far as Neal is concerned, so impressive and so fun to watch him knocking down the flag a couple of times there on Sunday, playing alongside the greatest golfer of all time, or at least we consider that to be the case. Many of us do. So, at the very least, one of the top two golfers ever, and you're out there with him. That's what makes golf so great. You get a chance to touch greatness in these spots, even if you're not a professional. If you perform well enough, you can earn your spot there, and you can go toe to toe, at least in one sense, on the same playing field as one of the most famous athletes on the planet, one of the most famous people on the planet in Tiger Woods. So for our third shot, yeah, smooth transition into Tiger Woods. And he opened the door a little bit as far as why he hadn't played since the Genesis. Remember, he had to withdraw due to illness. At least that's what we were told was the case. Had to get an IV via the emergency personnel, in fact, down at Riviera. So a little bit of a scary moment there for Tiger. The last time we saw him on the golf course, did not play in the interim. So about 2 months off of competitive golf between his event, the Genesis Invitational in LA, and the Masters. But he was talking about getting back home after the fourth round wrapped up, which you mentioned was his 100th all time at Augusta. He was talking about getting back in the gym, making sure he's recovering, lifting, and basically adding to his workload. So it sounded like he was at least optimistic that he's going to be able to fulfill what he talked about back at the Hero at the end of last year, in which he said he wanted to play about once a month through the major season. Well, now we're in major season. So we got the PGA Championship at Valhalla coming up in Kentucky next month, May. And then June, of course, the U.S. Open at Pinehurst, where Tiger came close in 2007. And then Royal Troon for the Open Championship overseas in July. So I guess my question to you, Zach, do you feel like he does do that? That's my primary question. Is health looked pretty good? Maybe as good as we've seen him, in fact, since that fusion surgery, since the car accident. Honestly, I think that's the best he was moving. And yeah, there were some moments. Augusta's a tough walk, as they always talk about, where he looked like he was struggling to get up and down those hills. But I think we have to allow for some of that and expect some of that at this stage of his career. Not quite a ceremonial golfer. If you make the cut, you're not a ceremonial golfer as far as I'm concerned, even though he really went down the leaderboard, down the scoreboard on the weekend, finishing last among those who made the cut. So I think he's going to get through at least the next two majors. I still feel like 4 months is a lot to ask out of him at this stage. Just by his own admission, he talks about how he hurts every day and how every day he doesn't quite know what to expect when we talk about how he's recovering from the previous day's action. So I guess I'm going to say I feel like he's going to play in 3 out of the 4 majors. What are your expectations for Tiger Woods? Not just even talking about competitiveness, just talking about being able to show up and play all 4 rounds if he does qualify.
Well, first of all, talk about guys that are not ceremonial golfers. Another tip of the cap to Jose Maria Olazabal
Mm-hmm.
for past champion for making the cut. And at the end, you could just see the back spasms at the end, and he just willed himself to that finish line. And just, I mean, you talk about bang up. I mean, Jose might have been in more pain than Tiger was, which is hard to believe. But what is he now? I think he's 58. I mean,
Yeah.
that's insane that he could pull that off. So, I mean, there's a lot to be said for the job that Jose is able to do. I mean, he somewhat regularly plays on the PGA Tour Champions, but not really that often. And yes, he is 58. Wow, I pulled that one out of my head, but I'll take that. But I mean, this whole week was, in a sense, designed for Tiger to fail, right? I mean, you start Thursday, and this guy probably did not sleep more than 5 to 10 hours the entire week because he had physios and he had to get his body ready. And then he has to turn that body already 2 hours behind from where it was because of the delays on Thursday. The round doesn't finish on Thursday, so you're playing, what is that, 23 holes on Friday, and then he's expected to come back and play on Saturday. I think he emptied the tank to make that cut on Friday and show himself that he can do it and have that milestone of passing Freddie Couples for the asterisk for most cuts made at the Masters consecutively. So there's a lot to be said about that. But I think when you empty the tank, there just wasn't anything left. And holes like the 4th hole were really a nemesis to Tiger the entire week, and they just reared their head consistently through. And I think there was a point where they even felt bad for Tiger that he had to re-tee, and instead of having him walk back and waste some more energy walking back to the tee, they did get the cart for him after a while. So I think they knew that Tiger was ailing, and they were just doing the best he can because they knew that he was going to have to find a way to the finish line. And I think there was something to be said for the fact that Neal, an amateur, was there. It was his 100th round, and hell hath no fury. He was clearly in some pain, but he was going to finish the round however he could, even if it meant that he finished dead last of those that made the cut. And I'm in alignment with you. I mean, if you look at the tour schedule right now, I mean, PGA Championship's just under a month away. May 13th is the week that it begins. And then you have the US Open the week of June the 10th and the Open Championship the week of July 15th. It's a really big ask. I mean, PGA Championships in Valhalla, which of course reminds you of the 2008 Ryder Cup, which was quite historical for a lot of reasons. So, I mean, I think he'll play there. And then I think what happened before was just he's going to have to see realistically where his body's at to see if he can tee it up at the US Open. Just Pinehurst, of course, is a historic track for so many different reasons, but is he going to be able to physically do all 3 of those? I mean, I think that's going to be up to his body to decide. And by his own admission, he doesn't know. And it's really tough to ramp it up again, as you've seen time and again when he doesn't get the starts. I mean, popular tour spots for him like the Memorial are just not possible, especially with the US Open the very, very next week. And not to mention Muirfield Village in some tracks, in some holes, is really, really difficult, especially hole number 10, that big walk up the hill, which for at least one of those rounds, he would have to walk up that hill to start his day, which is an incredibly hard ask when you're activating your body and getting all the physios that you can to get around. And really, it's going to be interesting to see that regardless, I think if whether he plays the US Open or not, I think the Open Championship's very feasible, but that would be the season ender, of course. I mean, let's face it, he's not going to get into the FedEx Cup playoffs. He's not going to get in the Olympics. And the only other 3 starts that he could have are the Barracuda, the 3M, and the Wyndham.
Hmm.
And I mean, could he possibly play the Wyndham? I mean, there's always the chance, but when the Open Championship's July 13th and the Wyndham is August 5th, that's less than a month. That's just not a realistic tune-up time. So if anything, I think the US Open's the one that he misses. which is, of course, how it happened before. I hope that's not the case, but you want to at least see him do it. But you obviously, more importantly, want to see him do it pain-free. And realistically, pain-free is a very, very relative term, especially in Tiger's vocabulary. I think any day he can put one foot in front of the other at this point is a really, really good day for Tiger, just with all the battle scars that he's demonstrated on and off the golf course. But I mean, here we are when December comes around in a few months, he's going to be 49 years old. He's getting close to being on the PGA Tour champions. And again, we've had this discussion before. I think it is more likely than what it was before just because he can ride a cart because by golly, John Daly's doing it. So otherwise, I don't think the PGA Tour champions is really what he would do. I think he would just do the Masters and then just whatever be just a great ambassador to this sport. And he still can be that. He can still do the PGA Tour Champions majors if he so chooses, or at least a couple of them. Pair it with the Masters. If he wants to do the US Open, that's fine. And then just maybe max out at 6 starts for the entire year. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's almost in a sense what Phil Mickelson did, but a lot more regularly towards a few years ago when he was on the PGA Tour. He played a couple of those Champions Tour majors because why the heck not? So really, I think that's what you're going to see from Tiger moving forward in just over 2 years' time from now. Well, closer to 3 years' time from now at this point. But at this point, I mean, you're going to get what you're going to get from Tiger. If it somehow leads to a PGA Tour win, major or not, that would be so incredible to see. And so many people have counted Tiger out before that it'd be really stupid to do so now. But I mean, this weekend of itself has to feel like a victory, even though the score wasn't great. I think it gives Tiger a lot of confidence that he found a way to finish and he found a way to have fun throughout it all. And, I mean, he still has the shots in his bag. It's just the pain tolerance and threshold that are really, really strong obstacles. And my favorite scene of the entire week for Tiger was on the range before the fourth round with Charlie, his son, participating in a drill, holding that club up. Just there was a lot to be said about the fun that created too. So just really, really glad that Charlie had a chance to enjoy the week too, and really glad that Tiger, I think, in his own way, had fun as well.
He did. He seemed to have a serenity about him that we're not used to seeing when he's struggling. And like we said, he made the cut, and it really wasn't that close. He made it by a few shots in the end because of the way that the field suffered on Friday afternoon. So he proved to be, like I said, much more than a ceremonial golfer the first 2 days. But even in the midst of the several over par that he shot on both Saturday and Sunday, he didn't seem to lose the spirit of competition, and we saw some smiles out there, like we talked about with Neal Shipley on Sunday. So maybe he's not transitioning to being a guy who just shows up to basically give the game a lift and to kick in all the nostalgia. But I think he's somewhere in between. The only reason is to win, Tiger Woods, and the Tiger Woods who understands his place in the game. So I think that's healthy for him, and I just hope he stays physically healthy because honestly, the ball speed with the driver is still in the high 170s when he cranks it up. That's above average on the PGA Tour. At this stage of the game, that's really impressive. And also the iron shots. He can dial in the precision when he needs to. At times, it seems to flag based on his physical condition as we get deeper into these tournaments. And then the short game was better than what we've seen in some recent Tiger Woods appearances too. So all aspects of the game are there in spurts. It's just not there consistently enough. I suppose those of us who still enjoy seeing him tee it up, and I count myself among that group, just have to appreciate where he's at right now and accept it, much like Tiger has had to accept where he's at right now. He's got no other avenue, right? He's got no other option except to do that unless he just wants to quit altogether, and I just don't think we're going to see him do that, whether it's now or after he turns 50. And I do agree with you. I think he's going to play some of those senior majors, especially the U.S. Senior Open, I would imagine. Okay, just a few minutes left on the PGN Par 4. Thank you for joining us. Time for the fourth shot as we approach the cup here, and some stories related to LIV, kind of a LIV grab bag here, Zach, because we haven't talked about the Renegade circuit in its third year, I guess second full year for the LIV Golf League. The first year more of an invitational series, as they themselves call it. But some interesting things that popped up in and around the Masters. First of all, got to go here because it's the newsiest thing, but Rory McIlroy was named in a story by a prominent British, I don't want to call it a tabloid, but a newspaper and a reputable financial newspaper that said, quote, Rory could be accepting of an offer that I believe was set at $850 million and also an ownership stake, a small ownership stake in the LIV Golf League. We've seen Rory soften on his stance against LIV. This still surprised me, though, to see that out there, and Rory himself refuted it, saying he's going to finish his career on the PGA Tour. So it was a strong refutation of that story, which the story itself, Zach, was weird from a journalistic standpoint. If you're saying somebody could and something is close, for me, it's not really a story, right? Because either tell me it's going to happen or it's not. I don't feel like that's necessarily a scoop. So I suppose that's the media atmosphere we're in right now, where you got to post everything you got, or else get passed by, or at least that's the thought among a lot of outlets and reporters. So I'll leave that to you in a second. But Rory refuting that, so we can start there. In fact, did you ever think that Rory could defect, because he has shown some dissatisfaction and he's talked about how he's felt like a sacrificial lamb for the PGA Tour?
There was no chance Rory's gone. I mean, you or I could go to LIV just as likely as Rory is. Rory's not well liked. There was no chance that Rory was going anywhere. I mean, I think he spoke enough when he decided to take his seat away from the player advisory board and stop making the impact. And I think that's good enough for him because he knows his place in golf is set and he doesn't have to worry about it. So, I mean, I think this is much ado about nothing and quite frankly, a waste of everybody's time.
Okay, well, for me, there were some parallels to Jon Rahm, though. He went pretty quiet on LIV late last year, and he started to couch his comments on LIV and saying that not that it was necessarily for him, but he understood why people would go. And then Jon Rahm did not refute the reports that came out late last year around Thanksgiving that said he was close to signing. So there were some echoes of that. And like you said, Rory stepped down from the Player Advisory Council. Rory has been definitely more down the middle. He has met with Yasir Al-Rumayyan, informally at least, talking about what the Saudi-backed league wants to do with the game of golf and what their goals are. And Rory has seemed almost resigned to the fact that the Saudis are going to be part of sport in general, but specifically his sport. Also, we heard from Jon Rahm and also Phil Mickelson, reading some of the transcripts from the Masters, talking about LIV going to 72 holes potentially and how they wouldn't have a problem with that, or in Phil's case, saying that he could see it happening. For me, that's a decent amount of smoke. I'm not sure it makes a big difference in the big scheme, but for me, like, LIV's whole marketing thing was we play 54 holes, and I actually kind of like that. I think it's a lot to ask for people to tune in and pay attention to 4 rounds of non-major events. I still think majors can be 4 rounds. I don't have a problem with that. But as far as run-of-the-mill events go, I don't have an issue with 3 days instead of 4. Just because 4 is the majority of a week. I don't know. We're asking a lot of golf fans and non-golf fans to try to latch onto this thing. So I feel like the packaging of the 54 holes was actually a benefit for LIV there. But I understand if they're still trying to gun after world ranking points. I still kind of feel like the OWGR ship has sailed with them, and it's not going to happen unless there is a framework agreement here that is actually consummated between LIV and the PGA Tour, and we're not sure that's going to happen anytime soon. So what did you make of that? A little bit of a concession, perhaps, to one of the demands of the World Golf Ranking and the majors, that LIV add some holes to their events.
I mean, like Sam Smith says, the writing's on the wall. And speaking of Rory, they've already moved on to Victor Hovland, so it's okay. But
Okay.
regardless of all of that, I mean, they're realizing that they're not viewed as a legitimate tour, and you have to make concessions if you want to be taken seriously. And I think this is also a move to get in front of this framework agreement and say, okay, this is something that's, if we want to continue, has to happen if we want to get acknowledged, not just by the OWGR, but by the PGA Tour if they want us to take us seriously. Jay Monahan knows that he can't muck this up. He has no room. He knows that at this point, the opportunity between being a figurehead and being viewed as seriously is such a finite line, and he has to steer in front of that. And putting Tiger Woods at the table has raised the stakes even more to get this right. And LIV on the other end is seeing that, yeah, we have some names, but I mean, look at the majors. Dustin Johnson was awful. I mean, there were so many guys that just are jealous of themselves. Brooks Koepka didn't even look the same. The only guy that really played completely well was DeChambeau, but that got overshadowed by his clubs and the fact that he took a patron sign off the course. So, I mean,
It's the best.
to be fair, and I mean, now he did have a good eagle on 54, but regardless of that, I mean, outside of that and the fact that he was a Thursday wonder, I mean, if you're a casual fan, I think more talk was about the clubs and more talk was about him taking the sign, the memes and gifs slash gifs that came from it. So, I mean, it was not a good week at all for Liv. It wasn't like last year where Brooks Koepka's battling down the stretch and so many guys are on the first and second page of leaderboards. You're just not seeing that. John Rahm is getting more headlines for cussing on the golf course and nearly falling asleep in Butler Cabin than what you actually saw on the golf course. And that was your defending champion. So, really, oh, and let's not even forget to mention about Greg Norman basically having to buy a ticket to get on the grounds and the 100,000 Sean Spicer handshakes that he took to with all the positive feedback he got. There's somewhere of a Stretch Armstrong in all of that. But regardless of that, this was not a good week for Liv. The figurehead who was basically told to stay away showed up because he couldn't help himself. DeChambeau got overshadowed. A Liv guy had to give the PGA Tour guy a green jacket. They're conceding that one of their biggest talking points might be wrong and has to get changed. I mean, this was complete worst case scenario week for Liv, and there's no two ways about it.
I don't know about worst case scenario because Bryson was there and he definitely brought a lot of attention to at least himself and the fact that he is still a relevant golfer. And also Cam Smith and Patrick Reed finished in the top 12, so they guaranteed. Well, Reed is going to be back for life, but Cam Smith
Read already, yeah.
showed up a little bit late to the party. But it, like you said, it definitely wasn't like last year when it felt like there might be a balance of power shifting a little bit. As of right now, I feel like Liv is stuck in neutral, but they are going to Adelaide, which was their most popular event last year. And I still think Liv's future, its most productive future, is to bring high-level men's professional golf to these places that don't see it that much anymore. And certainly Australia might be the most fruitful market for them. It already has been last year based on the attendance. So they have that coming up. But for the most part, these guys just have to perform in the majors, right? Because that's when the spotlight is going to be on them. And so that's just rightly or wrongly, fair or unfair, that's the way it is. And just 3 Liv players within shouting distance of Scottie Scheffler on Sunday. Not a great development for them, certainly. Okay, we're under a minute here, Zach, so we can't really get to the champions dinner menus, whatever. I'm not really sure that I had anything interesting. I don't know if you did. So you have about 20 seconds if you want to fire off your entree at least.
Nope.
No. Okay. Not at all. Perfect. We can move on from the novelty of that.
Filet mignon.
Hoping to, much like Tiger, hoping to stay on the once a month PGN schedule for at least the rest of the pro golf season. If our health keeps up and we stay physically able to do it, we would love to be with you back again. So thank you again for watching the PGN Par 4. We got to sign off. For Zac Weiss, I'm Matt Geica. Talk to you next time.